But also, I think it's important to showcase that there are still a lot of passionate people in this industry, that it's not just about business. I mean, of course, that's important, especially now. But, the people that are here and they're in it for the long haul and they're in it for the right reasons. And I think that's a huge part of, how we can grow going forward and how to move San Diego beer.
You are listening to the Capital Craft Podcast, brought to you by the San Diego Brewers Guild. I am your host, Erik Fowler.
And I'm Jeff Fox of Beer Media Co.
And I'm Neva Parker, Director of Operations at White Labs.
Awesome. Thank you, Neva. We're super excited to have you sit down today and let listeners get to know you a little bit better. But Neva is going to be one of our newest board members for the San Diego Brewers Guild in 2025 and 2026. So we wanted to use the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and your experience with, craft beer globally, but more specifically San Diego, and maybe a little bit more about your role as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really wasn't expecting to have to talk about myself as much as just being a board member. My idea was just kind of to be in the background and, do some stuff. But here I am.
It never works how you plan, does it?
No, I guess not. I'll give a little synopsis of my background, I guess. I've been working in the beer industry over 20 years, which sounds crazy to say. I feel like everything in my life is like 5 years ago, so it's
right.
Weird to think that, it's been that long. But 100% of that time has been in San Diego and with San Diego beer. So I've had a unique experience in terms of, watching the brewing industry here grow and shift, and it's gone through all these different changes over that time, and just kind of being part of that has been really fun to see, and sometimes challenging, but overall fun. And I've been with White Labs that entire time as well. I was a board member prior to this for the San Diego Brewers Guild back in 2011-ish, somewhere in there.
So
returning board member. But it was really sort of like Wild West back then in terms of like organization. We were just starting to kind of piece things together in a little bit more organized fashion. And not to say that things didn't exist. A lot of the early members did a lot for San Diego beer, but at that time we were really trying to get organized, get, sponsorships, funding, more visibility across the local community, and just get the word out about San Diego beer. But, we didn't have an executive director back then. It was kind of just us trying to get some things done and, do what we could. But it's much different today. So I'm excited to be back and be part of it again.
Yeah, the mechanics of it are a lot different, but sometimes the intention and purpose hasn't changed that much, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure now versus then is a lot different. How did you get your start in the beer industry, and a little bit about your background in White Labs and all of that?
It was really kind of a fluke, I would say. I mean, I tell the story all the time. It's nothing that special, but I graduated with a degree in biology. So really my background is in science, and I moved down here shortly after graduating from Spokane, Washington. I went to Gonzaga.
Oh yeah,
Bulldogs. Yeah.
I was University of San Diego. We're rivals, college rivals. Yes. Yeah, the Toreros.
Yep.
Wow.
Definitely. big basketball fan. We still watch all the time. So
wow.
Yes. For sure. But yeah, I kind of just ended up down here, and honestly, I was just looking for a job, and there was a posting, and it looked interesting. I went in for an interview, and I met Chris White and Lisa White, and we really just kind of hit it off. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like a beer thing. I had no idea jobs like that even existed. So, I guess the rest is history.
That's
been there ever since.
It's kind of how it works, right? Is like you never expect, you never end up where you expect.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And what, you were talking about it kind of being the Wild West, right? And I remember when I first entered beer, around 2010, there was a lot of growth in terms of new faces, new breweries. There was a lot of excitement. And, recently you see a lot of introspection of where the industry's been. There was a Facebook post recently in one of the industry groups, and it made me think of two things pretty quickly. It was a brewery that was struggling to survive and or thinking about closing. And the first thing was all of the comments were discussing outside forces, right? It was inflation, labor costs, lessening consumer demand. And the second thing was really that there weren't a lot of bright voices looking ahead. And I think that's changed in my experience in this industry. We need to kind of categorically shift as a whole. I understand each individual business has to, triage when necessary, but I think a big part of the guild and where San Diego beer needs to go is we need to start looking where we want to go 5-10 years from now, like we did 5-10 years ago. Where do you what was your experience around that time, or when you first entered San Diego beer compared to where it's at now?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I think back in those days, we were relatively fortunate in that craft beer just in general was growing very rapidly. And so I think a lot of companies within that industry just had exponential growth just as a result of, the market and the excitement around craft beer. And when you get to a place where we are at now, where there are outside forces like inflation and, costs are rising, California is very challenging to do business, especially if you're a small business anymore. There's a lot of restrictions. There's so many, things that you have to really face as a business. So it is more challenging, but I think as San Diego beer, as beer in general, the market is maturing. So all the businesses within that industry have to mature. And if that means, being smarter about, your financing, your finances, your, P&L, I mean, those are things that maybe weren't at the forefront of everyone's minds 10 or 15 years ago, because there was just growth, a lot of growth, a lot of sales, a lot of...
Just see how you could keep up with that.
Exactly. I mean, it was the opposite problem, right? Where you're like, how do we scale now? But, we are living in a recession and, beer is maybe not the number one choice for a lot of consumers. So how do you get through all of that? And really, it's just taking a look at how you do things smarter, work your business, and just... we got to mature with how the market is shaping up. So I think that's really important. If you can do that, I think, you can weather the storm, and that's kind of what it's about right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And, one thing that we are really excited to look at and work on next year is showcasing the people of beer. So one of our themes that the Guild wants to do in any of our events or marketing initiatives is looking at the individuals that make beer and try to showcase them in a way that can be relatable for people maybe not in the beer industry or looking to get in there, to see somebody that might have certain qualities like they do and say, that is something that if that makes that person happy, maybe I want to do that too. And so repersonalizing who we are as a local industry is something that we're really going to focus on. And I think we've, kind of seen that change and shift over time, for better or worse. I mean, nobody liked the rock star brewer of, years past, but I think it also did lend some marketability to us as a region when you knew the people behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very true. I think, even for someone like me who's been in the industry for quite a while in San Diego, there's still a lot of new faces that I don't know myself, and I think it's important to get out there. That's how people connect with businesses. You feel personal, if you know somebody, I think you're more likely to go there or spend time at a brewery or, at your local establishment, whatever that may be. So I think that's very true. But also, I think it's important to showcase that there are still a lot of passionate people in this industry, that it's not just about business. I mean, of course, that's important, especially now. But, the people that are here and they're in it for the long haul and they're in it for the right reasons. And I think that's a huge part of, how we can grow going forward and how to move San Diego beer into the next 5 or 10 years.
This episode of the Capital of Craft podcast is brought to you by Proper Pack. Looking for a way to stand out? Want to be environmentally responsible and financially prudent? Our new guild members have you covered. Proper Pack provides eco-friendly paper can carriers that are curbside recyclable, fully customizable, and affordable. Learn more and request free samples at www.theproperpack.com or email at info@theproperpack.com. Because great beer deserves great packaging.
Now is a harder time than ever for breweries to navigate the rapidly changing market, but Beer Media Co. is here to help. As a proud partner of the San Diego Brewers Guild, we are a full-service digital marketing and content creation company that works with San Diego breweries to reach new customers and create amazing engagement for their websites and social media accounts. If you are a small brewery owner trying to figure out the whole social media thing, or a larger brewery looking to up their engagement, send us a message at info@beermedia.co because we know SD Beer.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like you could almost look at it as an opportunity, right? As like when you're just trying to figure out how to scale, it's hard to kind of make that personalized experience. Whereas, as you're able to kind of like look a little bit more introspectively, you can, create a more personal experience for your customer and stuff, and make those personal connections a little bit more too, which I think, again, depends. As a marketing person, I see that as an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I think, the more you can connect with people one-on-one, the more loyal they're going to be to your brand, whatever that may be. And, that's, I think, where we're at right now. And I have the same mentality. If I go to certain breweries and I know someone at the brewery, I'm more likely to go, because even if they're not there, I'm like, oh, I know so-and-so at that brewery, so let's go have a beer there. Or I know, this place, so let's go have a drink there. Like that's just how people's minds work when they're, going out and wanting to spend time or money at a place. It's important to have some sort of connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it goes beyond the product, right? It's more than the beer needs to be great, but the experience and the people that create that experience and nurture that community and relationship are more important. I recently had somebody within the industry kind of tell me about, volunteering for certain beer things and going to every event, and just kind of saying, beer is what I do and I love it, but it doesn't define who I am. And I really thought that was interesting, because not that beer has defined who I am, but a big part of it has for a long time, both professionally and personally. And a lot of people that I've surrounded myself have been the same way. But I'm starting to see a healthier balance in myself and in people around me of not separating it, but really balancing that aspect of which part is for you and which part is for a career or an industry that you want to be a part of.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. It is hard, I think, in this business, because it's fun. So you go to events and it may be work and it may be fun. Mm-hmm. So it is important. It's healthy to separate those things, because you could get burned out.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially in my early career, that's probably how it was for me. We'd go to a lot of events. I mean, San Diego Beer Week, 10 years ago, I just remember going, okay, every day I have to go to something. San Diego Beer Week, I would look at the calendar, I would write down what I was doing, I would plan my entire week and pick which events I would attend. And, by the end of the week, you're like, I'm so exhausted. Mm-hmm. Why do I feel like I need to do this? And I live here. I could go to these places anytime I want, but just kind of trying to pack all of that in, because it felt like the thing that I needed to do. And, was there enjoyment in all of that? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. It was just like, it was more of like, I just need to go and do this. It's Beer Week. I have to go to everything. And that's hard, because you want to love it and you don't want to burn out on what you love. So you have to separate it to some extent. And, now I rarely go to many events. I pick and choose the ones I go to. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of what happens, I guess. We have a family, so I'm not trying to do something every day.
Yeah, that avoiding that burnout, I think, is a good conversation when we talk about the industry maturing. It's more than just the way we run a business. on paper and the consumer demand and changes in that part of it, but how we treat our employees and what the culture of craft beer is. And that's what's really shifting, I think, for the better. And it's going to be more sustainable long term, because how do you expect somebody to develop a career doing this? Very few people can manage that.
Yes.
And do it for that long, and still remain passionate about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, it's difficult to shift your mindset away from the need to do these things, because these events and, the kind of stuff that we do is very social. So you have to understand whether that's social for work or is it social for fun? Is it both? Can it be both? I guess so. I really firmly believe that any industry is going to ebb and flow. Beer is going to ebb and flow. We're going to see ups and downs. It's not the first time we've seen, this kind of industry trend. So I think now is the time to start building those relationships with the consumer. And, because there may be fewer and far between compared to what it was 5 or 10 years ago, those relationships and that experience is even more important. Like, whatever your touch points are, that touch point is the most important thing that you can do. And you want people to really enjoy that. And as, people working in the industry, we want to enjoy those relationships with people too.
Yeah. Where you've done a lot of traveling for beer and seeing, we've spent a lot of time in Asheville, North Carolina, which is an amazing beer town. How do you think the rest of the premier beer cities in the U.S. compare to where San Diego is at or has been?
It's hard to say. Obviously I've lived and worked in San Diego, so I think the majority of what I see intimately is here. But I've spent a lot of time in North Carolina. I've spent time in, Chicago, the Pacific Northwest, other areas where there is a lot of great beer. And culturally, they're all different. It's a result of just where you live and the environment and the local culture. I do think, though, San Diego is a fairly mature beer market. We've had a county, Brewers Guild for a long time, and not many other places have that. There's a lot of state guilds, maybe, larger guilds, but the San Diego County and city has been around for a long time. And, I think that speaks volumes just in itself, because it's very, very local. It's not California. that would be very difficult, but a lot of, like North Carolina, for example, Asheville, there's the North Carolina Brewers Guild. So there's, bigger guilds because they're spread across various geographical areas. And I think we're really fortunate here in that there's a lot of breweries in a small area. So it's very localized, brewers and the relationships are very close, and I think that's pretty unique to where we live.
Yeah, there's still, because of the size of San Diego, there is like geographic differences, and there's some crossover, but it's when the guild does an event in North County or Vista in particular, like there's one group of people, and when there's Central San Diego or South County, South Bay, it's also another group. So that it's interesting that it is factioned, and the needs of those different areas vary quite a bit. Especially the taproom based business models that you see very strongly up here.
Yeah, and that's totally true. It's kind of funny because I want to say, when I was on the board before, we probably had about 30 members, 33, something like that. And over the course of the time that I was there, 3 or 4 years or whatever it was, I think it went from like 30 to 110, which is crazy. And a lot of them were in North County just because of, city.
Yeah, Vista's done a really proactive job on trying to recruit breweries.
Exactly, and space, like
there's good business parks.
Exactly, so there's so many things like that. And so there's a lot of breweries up in North County, and personally, I'm not driving often to North County because I live in Central San Diego, and it does feel far away. But I still feel like there's a huge sense of community, even though there's maybe areas where they're more centralized. And
Yeah, and we do have 2 North County-based board members for the next 2 years, which is really exciting because that geographical representation or lack thereof has made it difficult to re-engage. Paige, the previous executive director, was based up here and had a lot of engagement with the community. So it's I've tried really hard, and the board's tried really hard to continue that engagement, but it's hard, when your local brewery, sees you once a week because it's where you bring your family and you're there. It's especially when drinking is involved, it gets difficult.
Yeah.
There's so many good breweries out there. It's kind of hard to they have that FaceTime at each and every one of them.
Yeah.
Which I know as a executive director and a board member is probably something you're trying to get out there and talk with everyone. But when you have this many members, it probably becomes tough.
Yeah.
So, how would you recommend people to kind of get more involved and get the most out of their membership with the Brewers Guild?
I honestly think the most important thing is the engagement. I know that there have been a lot of events that are kind of geared towards education for brewery members, and I think really just trying to engage in those, because not only is it a way to sort of further your own knowledge around different topics related to beer, but also it's again that interactive social aspect, which I think is important for us as a guild, is to really have good relationships with each other and understand the challenges and the successes and all the things that are happening. So how do we better reach out to brewery members and get them engaged in some more of those events that are really designed for them, but maybe it's not the right topics or it's not the right locations, or how do we do more to engage the membership and provide them with the most value?
Right.
Yep. We don't know unless they speak up, right? What those needs are. We've got a survey going out soon, and the SD Brewers professional app will be released in 2025, and that's going to be exciting because it's a really good engagement tool that can, you don't have to sift through your emails to find something. You can see what the latest updates are right on your phone and save the date straight from there. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
that'll be really
a lot going on. But we wanted to thank you for coming out today, and thank you for serving on the board the next couple years. And we're excited to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
And if someone wants to find you or reach out and get in touch, what's the best contact method for you?
Anybody can reach me at my White Labs contact, which is just N for Neva, N Parker at whitelabs.com. Really easy. Probably the easiest way to get in touch with me, or social media. I'm there, Neva Parker, on Instagram and whatever else. It's all somewhere. The same.
Well, your chosen platform. Speaking of chosen platforms, thank you for listening to the Capital of Craft podcast. If you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe on the YouTube. And also you can follow us at SD Brewers on Instagram and your chosen social media there as well. So thank you for listening.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.